Today we're moving on to module 1. So we've done module 0, and right now as I'm starting module 1, I'm realizing there was one final recording for module 0 that didn't make it to the podcast yet. So I will go ahead and get that up for you soon. But we're moving into module 1, and all of module 1 will be housed in this one recording. There will be a playbook going out in our paid thread later today, our chat thread, later today or tomorrow, along with probably a link to the transcript for those of you who prefer to read. So we're going to talk today about calm, assessing calm, accessing self through the portal of calm. And this is a really important aspect of self-leadership for numerous reasons. It's really misunderstood. I think some of what I'm going to say will feel like, review for some of you. Some of you are seasoned meditators, and this may feel like, oh, this is all the same thing over again. Please do me the favor and do yourself the favor of listening anyway. There will be, at least for every single person, 1, if not 3 little nuggets that make this worth your time. I promise you. So I want to talk about self-leadership, and I want to talk about why it's so important that we're beginning with calm. So the first thing that a good leader does is de-escalate a situation. Before strategizing, before making a choice, before any of the other inner work we're going to do together, you need to be able to get regulated and to de-escalate your parts. When you're activated, you lose access to self-energy. You lose access to self-leadership. It's not that you're doing it wrong. It's that activation all by itself represents being blended or hijacked with a part, is what that represents. So we want to go back into self-energy where all the resources are so that you can get resourced enough to lead in that moment. And this is a crucial step for getting your parts system to trust your leadership. So this is the first skill, because without it, you're dead in the water, and the rest of this work won't hold. Your parts aren't going to trust you. And I want to say this does require practice. It is a practice. The practice will start the minute you choose to start it, and it will continue at least through the remainder of this course/book/work that we're doing together. And let's just look at it this way. Simone Biles didn't just waltz into the Olympics and perform her routine without training. When you see Simone Biles at the Olympics, or when you watch anyone at the Olympics, this represents thousands of hours of practice made available to someone in a single moment under high pressure. This is what training does. It not only builds the skill, but it builds your capacity to use the skill when challenged. And the moment you get activated in an argument, in a difficult conversation, in traffic, at the checkout line, when someone disappoints you, that's your Olympic moment. That's your game day. And you cannot learn the move on game day. You cannot learn the routine at the Olympics. So if you don't practice returning to calm when it's easy, if you don't practice accessing that portal, it won't be available to you when things are challenging. So this is why practice is important. But practice isn't the end goal in itself. And I'm going to talk about this as we go on, but the end goal is not to always feel calm or to think that calm should be your natural Zen state, whatever that even means. But I want to really share with you something about what makes this challenging and what makes it easier. So what most people don't fully take in is that your body knows things your brain doesn't know. Your body remembers things that you do not consciously remember. And we can say that it's in your body, and it may very well be there. It could be in unconscious parts of your brain also. It could be in both as a body mind, right? So the body and mind are connected. And positive thinking, insight, self-awareness, all those beautiful conscious things that we do operate from the neck up. They operate in a specific part of your brain, and they don't necessarily or automatically reach your body. They don't necessarily shift things at that subconscious level. Changing the way you show up automatically in relationships, at work, with yourself requires changing your body's state, and not just your thoughts about your body's state, but your body's actual state. And that's what this module is about. And I want to, to connect with this, I want to say self-energy is a neurophysiologic state. It is what we feel when we're in a state of regulation. It's not a persona, it's not a way of speaking, it's not a personality type. It's not something some people have or other people don't. It's a state your nervous system can enter. And calm is one of the most easily accessible entryways into it. You don't have to be a calm person. You just need to know how to access self energy through that doorway when you need it. And it's really easy to do. We'll talk about it in a few minutes, but it's a super easy, accessible way to do this. And I guess I'm just going to tuck this in right now because we just mentioned the body mind connection. Part of the reason this is such an easy thing to do is that your body is constantly, scanning the environment for threats. And your body is using your mind is using your body as a source of data. So you can make a conscious decision to change the data that your mind is reading about the threat level. And we'll go into this in more detail later. But it's because the body and mind are so wrapped together and so acutely responsive to one another that calm is actually something you could potentially easily access with practice. So every other technique in this course, every conversation with a part, every moment of inner listening, every self-inquiry you do works better when you're doing it from a state of self-leadership. We're going to come back to this again and again, but we really, to the degree possible, want self doing the work, not parts. That doesn't mean we don't want to hear from parts, but we just don't want parts in charge of the work. It doesn't work as well that way. So some of you really might already be here in a pretty activated state, might be really stressed out. And I want to just also think for a moment about your body as something like a rain barrel. It's like an analogy, right? So think of your capacity for stress in your body as something like a rain barrel. And if the barrel's already full, it doesn't take a storm to make it overflow, just one more drop and it's spilling over. Similarly, if you're walking around with a lot of stress and a lot of activation, it doesn't take much to get you to overflow. It just takes a little bit. So this chapter and the practices that we're talking about are practices that will gradually release water from that rain barrel, will drain that rain barrel down so that you have so much more room and so much more capacity to take in a storm without overflowing. And I want to say, and I said this a little bit, but I really want to go into a little bit more detail right now. This practice is not about calm as avoidance. And I'm sorry, my slides were definitely not caught up with my talk. I apologize about that. But this is a trap a lot of people fall into. They learn a self-regulation practice or they meditate, they get really good at it. And they say, well, I meditate, I'm really good at it. But when I get up off the cushion, I can't cope with life. I can't make the next step. Or they use this meditation as a way to avoid the underneath, what's underneath, because starting to look at what's underneath is dysregulating, right? The parts underneath there are dysregulating. So a lot of people are calming down and stopping there, and they never pass into the doorway of self, where you get the more expansive perspective on yourself and others. And what we're building here is not a way for you to stay calm no matter what happens. We're building a passageway. We're building a doorway into self energy. So calm isn't the destination, it's a passageway. And the reality is, as you move forward in this work, there will be times that you get activated. Parts will surface. It's going to happen because they have to. That's what we want to happen. That's how we're going to shift the self to part relationship enough for that part to trust self's leadership. So difficult things are going to come up. That's not a sign you're doing it wrong. It's a sign that you're getting somewhere. However, we're going to really want to rely on that skill of returning to calm. There's no skill of staying calm. You're going to get dysregulated. It's okay. The skill is to return to calm when you get activated and to maintain that. So really, a good leader de-escalates first. It's the very most important thing to do. Game day is not the right time to learn the moves. Calm is a doorway, not a destination. You're not going to stay there the whole time. You're just going to know how to get back through that doorway. So I want to talk a little bit about what activation really looks like and another model for thinking about activation that might be helpful. I'm going to talk about the window of tolerance model and different ways to think about activation levels. So This is just another way of understanding what's happening in your system when you get activated and even when you get shut down, which is just a different form of activation. So just imagine there's a scale of from 1 to 10 and you just see it out there on a line. And in the middle, roughly 4 to 7, is the window that's sort of ideal. That's where you have enough energy to engage with the world, enough calm to actually think, and enough courage and presence of mind to connect. This is where the 8 C's live, where you're calm, clear, courageous, connected, and all of that good stuff is happening for you. And I'm just checking here to see if there's anything happening in the chat. And right now there is not. Okay. So when you're in this window, you have choice, which is, again, what some people think of as the 9th C. You're not on autopilot. You can respond rather than react. So above that window, in the 8 to 10 range, you're pretty highly activated. You might be in fight or flight mode when something activates your system and you're shooting up to 8, 9, or 10. This is a high stress moment. Muscles get tense. You have a short fuse. Your thoughts might be racing. You might notice tension in your jaw. You might be a little irritable. You might have a hard time sitting still. And this is your sympathetic nervous system mobilizing a threat response. It's fight or flight. And your body's trying to protect you. And like I said before, this happens really quickly. Boom, boom, boom. It's a very fast moment by moment response. And it's supposed to be, because probably when a predator was sneaking up on our ancestors 10,000, 15, 20,000 years ago, they didn't have a lot of notice about this. We have to just react in order to address that threat. So our body's trying to protect us. This makes total sense. The body is responding to what it perceives as danger, even if the danger isn't actually immediate and it's just a text message or an idea, a thought, or possibly someone's tone of voice. And then there's the below the window. And this is an easy one for people to miss. This is the 1 to 3 range. And this is where you look shut down. And this is also oddly about stress, and it's about threat. It doesn't look like stress because it looks like stillness. And what this is actually collapse. And you can see this in like wildlife videos, that sometimes the gazelle collapses before the lion even gets there. It's so much stress, collapse happens. And this is shut down. We disconnect. You might spend hours doom scrolling. You might watch something and numbing out, fooling around on your phone. You might not be able to do the things that you know would help because you don't have the energy, you don't have the motivation, and you feel a little bit flat, maybe want to disappear. Sometimes people will think of this as depression, sometimes laziness, but very often it's just the nervous system hitting a wall. It's actually gotten so overwhelmed in the fight or flight that it has come back around to collapse. There's no escape. I'm not going to outrun that lion. I'm just going to collapse. So very often it's the nervous system hitting that wall, going dormant, and it's not a character flaw. It's just biology. And that introduces 2 additional stress reactions, freeze and fawn. So when we're outside the window, we tend to go to one of those 4 places. Fight and flight are in the overactive realm. And whether you fight or flee can be characteristic of you. That could be your go-to move. It is usually based on when you face those very first threats and what made the most sense at that time. And then in the overwhelm department, we have freeze and fawn. So shut down, dissociation, feeling going blank, not being able to speak, and fawn. And this is what a lot of people experience. They call it people pleasing, but it's actually a stress response. Going along to get along, making nice, not because you mean it, but because some part of you is afraid. Some part of you has associated threats to relationship as threats to your life, and it's so scary to set a boundary that you will fawn. So notice which one of these is the most familiar. You probably have a signature move. You may have multiple. Maybe you're just a smorgasbord of all 4. But just think about which one of these feels most familiar, which ones resonate. And none of this means you're doing anything wrong. These are your system's best attempts to keep you safe. They are often associated with a part of you that thinks this strategy is the best strategy. And it's based on what it has learned in the past, sometimes from experiences that happened when you were a toddler and you didn't even have words for this. Your body is responding to what it thinks is happening. So remember, at the top of this conversation, We started by talking about that your body and mind remember things that you don't remember consciously, right? So your body is responding to what it thinks is happening, which might include memories you don't hold consciously and you don't have access to. And the first step here isn't to fix it, it's just to recognize it. I'm out of my window. That's the whole move. No shame, no blame, nothing. You're not trying to fix yourself. You're not trying to control yourself. You're simply trying to help your system settle. So there are practices, we talked about Simone Biles needed to practice. We need to practice. And I have sort of a 3-step frame that this was my go-to in a couple of really difficult times in my life. And it tends to be pretty helpful for a lot of people. And for just a moment, we're going to be really rigid about what constitutes a threat. So the first thing in this that you want to do is notice, something in my body is telling me that I'm activated. Maybe it's tension. Maybe it's that I'm kind of zoned out and playing on my phone and can't stop. Don't analyze, just notice. Notice, something is activated. Step 2, assess. Ask yourself one question. Am I actually in danger right now? Not theoretically, not eventually, not in 5 years, not next week, right now. Is there an immediate threat to my physical safety? Am I going to die in the next 5 minutes? Almost all the time, the answer is no. It's very rare that we're activated or shut down and actually in danger of immediate death. Extremely rare. Our system's responding to something real, a conflict, a trigger, a memory, but you're not in immediate danger. So that means you can take the next step. Now, if the answer is yes, if you're in one of those rare moments where in the next few moments you actually could be dead, act accordingly. Get yourself safe. This practice is for when threat isn't physical and isn't real. Okay, so if the answer is yes, you're really literally in danger, you could die any moment. Step 3 is get safe. But assuming that you're in the vast majority of the times where you're not about to die, the 99.9999% of the time that you're activated, you're not really going to die. You notice that you're activated, you've assessed that you are not in immediate threat. The next thing you do is redirect. You just bring your body back to the window. And here's how you do that. Just plant your feet on the floor, flat on the floor, and feel the ground underneath you. Let that contact be real and let it be the focus. Notice the earth rising up to support you through the bottoms of your feet, through the chair you are sitting in, through the floor, whatever is holding you. You don't have to hold yourself up right now. Invite your muscles to lengthen, to soften, just a little bit. You don't have to get all the way there. Just a little bit of softening is enough. Focus in just briefly on your breath and exhale a little bit longer than you inhale. Maybe inhale for 3 counts and exhale for 4. And do this a few times. Here's why this works. A longer exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and relax part, the calming branch. You're literally sending a signal to your body that the threat has passed. That is your conscious decision-making parts able to change how your body acts that will send a different message up to your brain that you're safe. And you can say to yourself, I'm safe. Not as a mantra or positive thinking, just as a fact. I'm safe. I'm safe right now. You're communicating with your nervous system in the language it understands through nervous system activation of the parasympathetic nervous system. And as you settle, even just a tiny bit, you can name what happened. I got activated. That's it. Not a story. We're not going to explain it. We're not going to analyze it. Just name it. I got activated. Or a part of me got activated. And this small act of observation begins to create some space between you, self-energy, and the parts responding. You are not the activation. You're the one who noticed it. And this is how you start to communicate safety to your nervous system. And this is how you also communicate safety in a way that says self-energy is present enough to notice that parts have been activated and it is present enough to provide bodily soothing. That calm creates a little gap between you, self energy, and these parts, between you and your thoughts. That gap helps you regain a position of self leadership. Now, I'm going to be really honest here. This is a little harder than it sounds, which is why we need practice. And thoughts are a lot stickier when you're activated, which is why you need all this practice when you're already calm so that you can use this when you're activated. Okay, so this is like practicing before you go to the gymnastics meet. Activation is about being parts led. And when you're activated, you are blended with or hijacked by a part. So it depends on, the degree that the part has taken over. It might be just a little bit that's blending. It might be hijacked completely. And in that state, thoughts don't feel like thoughts. They feel like facts. They feel like the truth. They feel like verdicts about you and the world, about what is true and what is going to happen next. We're going to go much deeper into parts of Module 4. But for now, just put a pin in this. This moment that you're activated and it feels like this names everything is just a part. One thing calm does, one thing entering that passageway does, is create enough distance that you can begin to see a thought as a thought and a part as a part. These are not reality. These are not the whole of you. And in IFS terms, you gain perspective. This is one of the 5 Ps of self-energy. And again, we'll talk about this a lot more in Module 4. But for now, I really want you to have all of the rationale and the reasons why this practice is so important, not to get right, but to begin practicing even right now, why it is such a cornerstone of the work that we're going to do in the rest of this process. So the brain has been designed to run toward negative thinking. It looks for risk. It's always threat assessing. That's what it does. It's not a failing. It's how we survived in the jungle long enough for us to be here having this conversation in this fabulous, amazing technology that we're using asynchronously over internet. Crazy. And I want to talk about the 2 arrows that come up, right? So you get activated. There's this part that gets activated, and there's actually 2 arrows. The first arrow is the thing itself that activated you. What you would see or hear if you were watching the movie of your life in this moment. Somebody snaps at you. Somebody cuts you off in traffic. A plan falls through. You get passed over for a promotion. These are the first arrows. They are real and they land and they are definitely painful. Not lying. That's the first arrow. But the second arrow is everything you tell yourself about it. The story you make up about what it means about you. The story you make up about what it means about them and how this all ends. What this is evidence for. The second arrow is almost always the source of the most pain and the most suffering. Unhooking the second arrow doesn't mean the first arrow didn't hurt. It means you stop adding more arrows to it. And this is where calm is extremely helpful, is the second arrow tends to be where we get caught up when we're activating, right? We tell stories about ourselves, about the other person, about the past, about the future. And unhooking, getting back to calm, takes that second arrow out almost immediately. And then we have the first arrow. This thing happened. We didn't like it. Okay? So some simple tools here for like cognitive separation, for separating within the context of your own mind as you settle into the somatic practice. You can just try one of these ideas. I'm having the thought that, just adding those words in front of whatever your mind is saying creates a tiny little bit of distance. So it's my thought, not a fact. The story I'm making up is, and that is one I think Brene Brown really uses this. That's not where I first encountered that language, but the story I'm making up is, a part of me is thinking. This acknowledges that a part of you has been activated without treating it as the whole truth. And that story I'm making up acknowledges that this is just a story you're making up. It may or may not be true. You don't need to challenge these thoughts or replace them. Not yet. You just need to notice that it's a thought. It's not a fact. It's a thought. It's a story. And it is maybe a thought or story held by a part. That's it. That's the whole move right now. Just notice it. Name it for what it is. We're going to go so much deeper into parts and the thoughts they carry in later modules. But for now, just naming, oh, that's a part, can be so relieving and can really free you up to do the earlier practices that we talk about to calm your body down. And that will shift everything. And again, my slides were behind my talk, and I apologize. So I'm just going to give you half a second here to look at these slides if you happen to be looking at the video, and then we're going to just move on to the next piece. So this is just the practice and integration. We want to open this window over time. And what we want to do is we want to make it so that you can stay in a level 4 to 7 of activation with even more potentially unsettling things happening, right? So the practice in this chapter does two things at once. In the short term, it brings you back when you've fallen out the window. In the long term, it gives the window more capacity, right? So you have more, you can tolerate more things without getting excessively activated or excessively shut down. Things that used to push you to a 9 now only register as a 7. You're not becoming someone who doesn't get activated. You're becoming someone who has the capacity to stay regulated under more pressure. This is a slow process. It doesn't happen the very first time you do it. It happens through repetition, especially when the stakes are low. And that's the best time to practice. And then you practice over and over as the stakes get higher. Now, I want to say this is really important for you to know before you even start. The benefits of this practice are not usually felt the very first time or even the very first week. The brain does change slowly. Rewiring happens through repetition over time. There's a really great book, Altered Traits. And they talk in that book about how some of the rewiring of the default mode network, that tendency that we have to go negative, that rewiring takes thousands of hours of meditation. But even just practicing 7 minutes a day for a few weeks can help you increase compassion. And compassion in this instance means the ability to witness the suffering of others without joining them in suffering ourselves. So you might do this for a couple of weeks and notice nothing. And then one day you're going to notice that you've caught yourself at a moment that would have brought you right up to a 9 or maybe even a 10, and you'll still be at a 7. Maybe you were a 4 right before, but you made a 7, and the practice got there before you did. This practice caught on before you noticed it. And seriously, literally, research on compassion meditation did find measurable results with just 7 minutes a day of meditation. Not a 40-minute sit, not thousands of hours, not a silent retreat for a weekend, just a few minutes a day consistently over a short period of time, relatively short period of time. So the reason a lot of people quit this is they don't see immediate results. A lot of the reason people quit this, they feel like they don't have time. And right now, please give yourself this time, especially throughout this process. Give yourself this time. The results are coming. They just arrive on the body schedule, not on the part of you, the schedule of the part of you that thinks you should be there already. And the other reason people tend to quit is they've mastered getting calm on the cushion or doing this activity in a non-threatening environment, and it's harder in the real environment. Or they think, oh, I should have been calm then. I practiced this meditation. But actually, that is another time to implement the tools you're learning, is when you are threatened, when you are noticing you've gotten activated. And you might be sitting around with some friends at a level of 4 in a coffee shop and notice that a breaking dish brought you to a 7. And that's a great chance to practice this. Not to blow off the fact that you got activated, but to say, oh, breaking dish. I remember the car crash I was in. That's not happening. I'm not in danger. I'm going to calm my body down. Oh, I'm back at a 4. All right. So you're going to practice this over time. And I want to also say that this is not always this calming part isn't always the thing, right? When you're in shutdown mode, you're hypoactive. You are less active than you're supposed to be. You're flat, numb, can't move place. Breath work can help, but it's not always the end all be all. Sometimes what you need is a little bit of activity. Sometimes what you need is a little bit of connection to another person. As social animals, we do feel safer when we are connected. And it might be a person or it might be a beloved pet. Being in the same room as people who feel safe. Going out to that coffee shop, before people start dropping dishes, petting your dog and looking in their beautiful eyes. These are not soft suggestions. This isn't really about being cuddly or nice. It's a physiological intervention. Eye contact releases oxytocin, which is a bonding chemical, which does help us feel safe as social animals. Connection pulls the nervous system forward out of collapse and into the window of tolerance. So when you don't know what else to do, reach toward someone. So there's one more thing this practice gives you that's worth naming, and it might be the most important thing of all. When you're regulated, you can be with someone in pain without being pulled into that pain yourself. You can hold space for a hard conversation without your parts flooding the room. And I want to say this is the thing that, and we'll go over this later in a lot more detail, but this capacity that you're building is not one that everyone has. And what that means is that you might be the one in the relationship that is capable of holding the field of self-energy. You will become able to be moved by other people without being swept away. You will feel what is happening within them without becoming completely captive to it. So for many of you as parents, partners, coaches, as someone who cares deeply about the people in your lives, this is the whole thing. This is the biggest benefit. The people around you need you to be present, not collapse alongside them. They need you to be moved by what is hard for them, to feel it. They need that mirroring, but they need you to not be undone by it so you can model not being undone. This capacity to remain present under pressure, to stay in the room without being taken over, this is what self-leadership in relationship actually looks like. And it starts here with this practice. So what you're going to do in this little chapter, in this little segment, once a day, when you're relatively calm, run through the protocol. Feet on the floor, feel the support, soften, longer exhale. I'm going to give you a handful of resources for your practice. When you do get activated, simply notice, assess, redirect. That's it. You won't always catch it the first time. That's okay. Every time you catch it, you've succeeded. And that's all we're counting, successes. And again, you're not trying to become someone who never gets activated. You're becoming a person who knows how to return from activation. Calm is the doorway. It's not the destination. It's the doorway to self-leadership. And when you don't re-regulate, you lose access to that doorway. And we want you to have access to self-energy. You're not trying to control yourself. You're not trying to behave better. You're not trying to be zen or impress people. You're simply helping your body settle and recognize safety. And this is a powerful way of returning to self-leadership. I hope this has been helpful. Would love to see what you all do with this information in workbooks and whatnot. And I am really, really struggling with Substack's video. So here we are. We are at the conclusion of this. Maybe you're watching the video, maybe you're on podcast. I am going to send you the playbook later today. It will walk you through starting a meditation practice if you don't have one already. And I welcome any questions or comments that you have about this. Many blessings.